YouTube Live.
Stop playing footsie with me.
You are closer
Now
to
that
me
is
than
so
normal.
inappropriate.
Oops.
She says I'm playing footsies with her, but you're closer to me. Get away from me.
I'm
You're
sorry.
too close. Are we really live? Oh, great. Okay.
Well, we had listeners.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Welcome.
You really aren't.
It's salacious.
No, absolutely not. It's all very innocent.
Okay. Clearly, this is before. Oh, wow. There's the phone going crazy. Yeah, clearly this is
Do we just
before.
need to hit the rewind button on this?
No, it's personality. It's fine. This is clearly before the live shows when we get the show recorded on Spotify and YouTube and that sort of thing, guys. So you got a little bit of behind the scenes of what we do when we record. This is Through a Therapist's Eyes. We're going to be talking about assertiveness today. Everything about assertiveness. Well, I don't know if we can do everything about assertiveness because there is so much about that topic. What do you think about this topic? No, live for the show. Never mind. That's too. I shouldn't ask that. We like to do that genetically or
Generically?
generically. No.
Organically?
Organically. Okay.
For the live show. Anyway, this is where you can interact with us. We get on YouTube Live at about 6:15, 6:30 on most Thursdays, and it's a good way to interact with us. We get your comments back and forth. We add them to the show. Glad you're joining us. If you're finding us for the first time, this is, I already said that stuff. Now you get the footsies thing got me out of
I'm
whack.
sorry.
Got
Let me talk to you through my forehead.
You're tired. She's gonna go. If she drops her head, just maybe.
Yeah, you might need to elbow me a couple
That's
times,
okay.
John.
I'll do that. But I mean, she's got a what's the opposite? A bachelor's pad, but it's
Bachelorette pad.
bachelorette pad because you've got that all set up. It looks like a place you're ready to camp and go to sleep in.
Oh,
Her
my
office?
Your office.
Oh, yeah.
She's
okay,
got a
for those
bachelorette
that-
pad for an
those
office.
that don't
like
ever
that.
come inside this office, I hate these fluorescent lights. So yes, in my office, I just have lamps, and I've been told it makes my office feel more homey,
Yeah.
and I think it helps people feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that, but I like the fluorescent lights. I'll tell you
No,
why.
I feel like I'm in a sterile doctor's office.
Well, we spent some money on getting these bulbs because they make a huge difference in lighting
yeah.
insofar as being daylights. You should have seen the color of the paint with the regular sort of yellowish tint
Yes.
lighting.
Like the warm lights.
Yeah, these lights are daylight, and you see I have no freaking windows, which is starting to bother me badly. So I know I've
Yeah,
done
that's what we have at our
lamps
house.
before.
At my actual home, we use the daylight
Right.
lights
we
in all
use
of
the
our stuff
daylight
too, instead of the warm lights. But
Yeah.
so in my office I have
Sleepy time with
lamps.
Victoria.
hey as what was
Well,
it? Was
you
it your
want-
client the other day who asked if I took naps on my couch? Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was
yeah,
it?
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I overheard that, and I said, yes, in fact, I do take naps on my couch.
Right.
It's a comfy
Well,
couch.
I actually think that's a good trait as a
Oh,
therapist.
absolutely.
Yeah.
What?
Take
That
a
you're
break.
very relaxed and
Take a break and as you need. All right, we ready to fire up? We ready to
Yeah.
goose it? We ready to go?
Get her done.
All right. Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes on December the 7th, 2023. I got it. This is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights directly from a panel of therapists in your home or car, but it is not the delivery of therapy services in any way. We're going to be talking about assertiveness today. So, you listening, I want you to understand, to implement, to gather some information about something that is, I think, point and primary to a positive and well mental health state. It is a word that people have heard before. I'm sure you've heard of it. You've probably used it, but honestly, I very rarely get the answer to the question using this word when I pose the question here in a little bit. Spoiler alert, you already know the question though. So I'm excited about this one. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited for them. What's that?
is it?
Is it
Yeah,
what?
you said your assertiveness. Are you?
I think so.
Okay, I'm joking. I'm teasing.
I think so. Let me see. We've got an ask. I think I'm going to start pushing Neil a little early. We got an ask where we really want to get the YouTube subscriber number. We need to get that up in 2024 to 1,000. We want to push for 1,000 subscribers to YouTube. And Victoria has her lips pursed and
what are we at
anxious
now?
to speak. We're not at 1,000. We are not.
So
at
this
1,000.
is aspirational.
This is absolutely aspirational, and it's a
Fantastic.
request. If you like the
I
show,
believe we can do it.
if you like the show, if you like the content, that is a way that you can really help us out. Click the like and subscribe. Give us some feedback on YouTube, Apple, iTunes. John gets very upset about 4 stars.
5 stars.
Yes, you have to have 5 stars to please John. Contact at throughatherapisteyes.com to interact with us. Look, this is the human emotional experience which we endeavor to figure out together. Who's our sponsor, Miss Victoria?
First Horizon Bank.
Ah, very good. What about our sponsor, John?
Well, they're all over the country,
Yep.
and they do loans, and they do banking and checking, and they're a downtown home-style bank.
Love them at First Horizons. Check them out. They're really into financial literacy. They really are there to help you, serve you. Their attitude is one that I've really enjoyed.
I
banking
think
with
customer
personally.
service is priority.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. First Horizon, thank you. We love you having on board. We appreciate your connection with throughatherapisteyes.com. So, do you really know what assertiveness is? And why do people get passive? And why do people get aggressive? You know, guys, I have asked, and I'm going to do our current event before we really get going, but I have asked this question in therapy many, many times over. Because I find that people get either passive or aggressive. Not passive-aggressive. Passive or aggressive. And there's lots of different forms of being passive and having passivity. And there are lots of different forms of being aggressive. For instance, passive-aggressive. But aggressive tendencies are not helpful. Passive tendencies are not helpful. And I don't think I have ever gotten the answer to the question, where we want to be is right in the middle, which is described by what word?
Assertive.
No.
Victoria whispers assertive. I don't even know if they heard you. That'll
Oh.
be fascinating to see if they actually heard
Assertive.
Victoria. Yeah, nobody
Yeah.
knows the middle.
I wasn't assertive when I said that.
No, and non-verbally passive. But I mean, I'm dumbfounded, John, how people really don't know the healthy spot in the middle of those two dichotomies on this scale. People don't know.
So it's either
assertiveness.
dial 0,
Right?
which is ultimately passive, or
Shut
dial
down.
or 1,000,
Blow up.
basically. Blow up. Kaboom.
People don't know the mid.
The mid, yeah.
And that's where we want to be, is in that mid zone.
And, and there's a little wobble room in there.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes you might be a little less assertive, but you can also, or even given the situation, maybe even a little bit more aggressive, but it's not aggressive in the bad sense. It's
No.
assertive. It's
Very appropriate.
dial it up.
I had to get my kids' attention multiple times throughout the parenting level with them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, your voice changes.
A lot.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a fun current event, though.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Listen, whether you're listening to this show in the holiday season or later on in the year, I really want you to hear this alert. This is not content for children. I would say anybody under the age of at least 10 and under, you might even think about, 11, 12 years old, though that's a little older and the older kids can handle it. I really do not want kids to hear this current event, okay? So if it's somewhere through the year or somewhere through the holidays, pop the volume off, listen to it later, because it really is good content for you adults, particularly parents. This is parent material for sure.
Okay.
So I think I've qualified it enough. I'll say it again because I really want parents to know, turn this off, no little ears, and we'll come back
Skip
later.
ahead about 5 minutes.
Yep, at least. Okay?
Excuse me.
That all being said, I hope people paid attention because we're going to talk about Santa Claus.
Oh, Lord.
I thought it was some salacious stuff.
No.
John and I are giving each other looks like, what the heck is
Where
he
you
about to
bought-
bring up?
I didn't notice. I was looking at the camera. Well, because this came up in therapy.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? This is a really important current event.
It came up today in therapy.
For you?
For me, yeah.
Did it? Really?
Yeah.
How did it come up for you?
Well, it was just that one of my clients said my new husband, the woman has a child that's in elementary school, and she said, my husband said there was no Santa Claus to my daughter. I am so angry with him, and she was so disappointed.
See,
It's a big deal, John.
yeah, we're currently having that
This
discussion
is
at my own
already?
household
Already?
about whether or not we are going, but about whether or not we're going to teach our kid that, like, tell our kid that Santa's real or not.
Oh, have some fun. I shouldn't poo-poo that. I please don't send me hate mail. I understand. I understand people carry the mentality, Victoria, and I don't want to poo-poo that, but I do fall in the line of, like, you know, it's fun for kids. It's a holiday magical thing, and I know people are kind of like carry the ideology, probably particularly for first children, but there's also others that just say, no, we're not going to do that. It doesn't support the right values, that sort of thing.
So then what where exactly are you going with this Santa thing?
Okay, the current event is just to your point, John, right?
Yeah.
How do you break it to? How do you deal with the children, and when and how?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I think we should go around and tell our stories about how we found out that there is no.
Well, I don't think we have time for that, honestly. Maybe we'll do that on a Christmas extravaganza.
I guess I was 15, but
was
I'm
a
just
whole-
joking. No,
My
it wasn't.
gosh.
But what I do want to tell the story is how I told my son. Now, listen, I screw a lot of things up, but I think this is something that I did very, very well. So, first of all, you know that this can be a traumatic reality. More than
finding
once.
out the truth?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. More than once, I've really, really had people struggle with this. I'm talking about resentments with their parents. I'm talking about,
'cause you're
traumatic
lying.
response people have said. This was traumatic for them, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a little over the top, but, you know,
But I
this
mean,
is hard.
if there's a history of trauma, then that just is
It just gets
another
embedded right
layer.
in there with
Yeah.
it. So I have a lot of clear thoughts about this, but what
Okay.
do you guys say about when and how to share this with the kids?
I'm not really sure of when. I won't tell my full story, but I found out at school. And then I cornered my mom and asked her,
Yeah.
like, hey,
Yeah.
you know, like, this is what someone said at school. Like, oh my gosh, is this real? And I found out about all of them at the same time.
Yeah. Usually that's what
Yeah.
happens.
And so I don't know, because I don't know. I think I might have more of a liberal thing to it where I'm not sure whether or not I want to keep, like,
Millennial.
yeah.
The millennial John.
So I'm not quite sure because I personally haven't had to do that
Okay.
yet. So I'm
Here's the
not-
thing, and your child is only 1 year old.
Yeah,
you know,
1.5.
ish.
Got a
So-
while.
So actually, I'm curious, John, what you say. Let's dialogue
Yeah.
for just a couple minutes about it. And then, Victoria, I'd be curious where your brain goes listening,
Okay.
right? So do you have thoughts, John? Have you dealt with this in therapy? How and when do we do this?
Well, in therapy, it was mostly parents or one person says something, and they hadn't consulted about it, and it's a parenting issue as well in terms of a relationship.
So one thing I hear for sure, be coordinated.
Yeah, be coordinated, and to be able to sit down. I want to suggest there is a question: is there a Santa Claus? By Francis Church, and this was back in the end 1897, and it was in the Sun. And you can Google this, and it's the best answer in the world, and it tells how to. It's where he talks. Virginia is 8 years old, and people were telling her there's no Santa Claus and there's no Santa Claus, and she writes the newspaper. 8 years old, and she does that. Of course, the people were very literate back in those days, but the point is that he talked about the spirit of Christmas, the spirit of Santa Claus.
Right.
And yes, there is a Santa Claus.
Well, I know about
and so that helps.
John looks at Victoria.
It
for
helps.
those listening to the audio version.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I'd like to add. Absolutely. Are you going to read it, or you?
No,
what do you got?
It's very lengthy.
It's lengthy.
Yeah, it's lengthy.
Very lengthy.
But it's in the Sun, and it's Virginia O'Hanlon, and but it's O'Hanlon rather, and it's Francis Church. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
I love that, and that's part of what I used with my son.
Mm-hmm.
So I dealt with this. I thought about this and I executed it with particularly my older son. My younger son, I don't even really remember, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the younger guy I learned from the older guy. I'm not sure how that worked. I don't remember.
And that's the way it worked with our kids.
Yeah.
And so they were actually, the oldest believed in Santa Claus, the longest
right
in the middle.
Well, but that's an important factor, though. So first of all, the when. In my mind, and I know, John, I've been able to pre-think this. So in my mind, you really listen to the questions of your child. That's a guidepost on when to do this. Because this person in therapy this week's oldest child was age 6, and they were getting the questions and whatnot. And so we determined that this is probably the last year that this is going to be the Santa Claus thing. So just like in a divorced family, my guidepost to help parents understand how much and what to share really relates to the questions that you're getting, because that demonstrates the developmental level that the kid is on.
And you're listening.
And you're listening.
Actively listening.
So the first thing is the kid has to understand they can ask any question possible. That's a crucial reality. And then when they begin to ask questions that are very formative about Santa Claus, that's your cue. Hey, they're picking up on this. That's the win. I think that's a simple answer to the win.
I was gonna say 13.
Yeah, well, that's pretty old.
I was gonna say I was more gonna say like if they make it to 13 and they haven't figured it out, then say it. But your answer
here's
makes
the
more
thing:
sense.
people carry this for their own benefit as a parent. Okay,
Yeah.
This is not about you, Mom. This is not about you, Dad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's about the kid and what's best for the kid and how to handle this, and it is important. So when you begin getting formative questions, whatever developmental level they're on, it's not the age, then that tells you the when. And here's a little bit about the how. I sat Aaron down, and I began to talk to him about the questions he was asking. I just, paraphrased, but like, look, Aaron, you were asking about this and, Santa Claus and how this works. And he's like, there really is a Santa Claus in the sense of what Saint Nicholas was and the traditions of what was done with gift giving and that type of thing. So there's a spirit here. There's a sense of giving. There's a sense of joy in sharing this joy. And we talked about those types of things. And then I explained to them that it's different, though, than the magical Santa Claus that you experience with the chimney and the twinkle twinkle and all of that sort of stuff. So the truth is, buddy, look, you're in a big group now. And so you're kind of getting older, and I want to welcome you to being kind of a bigger kid. And so it's framed positively. It's framed as you're in the group. You now have knowledge that I'm saying, no, that's not true. But what is true is the spirit.
But let me interject something in this, and that is that the values is that you redirect and say, why do you receive gifts? And
Sure.
then talk about that and said, what. And then if you have a religious background, you talk about the idea is that giving
100%.
100, and that it's in a way it's to show that spirit of Christmas.
And here's
is to give
and to share joy and to share self. And here's the privilege of this information, because I saw his wheels just turning. And the Easter Bunny's a part of this, and he asks questions now as we're talking.
All of them.
So is that And there's a funny thing about that, Victoria. But we're going long here, probably way long.
Well, maybe this is what we needed to talk about.
You know what?
now.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. I don't know how far we want to go, but so maybe I don't need to rush it. We'll just change the title.
No, we can assert ourselves
but then
later.
It's like my question is, I can see, phrasing it like that, but then still, because I think about myself, because I'm slightly selfish, and I think like I would still be mad.
As a kid?
Yeah, like I think I would still hold resentment towards my parents of like, you lied to me for like.
I can assure you, my kids never said that.
Yeah, they didn't worry about
They
that
did
either,
be-
particularly
Yeah.
if you're in an age where, they're beginning to form these formative questions. If you go on to
Okay,
like,
maybe.
12 years old, 10's a little older. That's why I qualified this for like 10 and under. Because
Yeah.
you start carrying that longer, that becomes about the parent. And again, I'm going to be hard on this. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad out there. You need to know that this is not about you. It's about what's best for your kid. You are going to lose the joy of being Santa Claus in the magical way. And you have to deal with that pain. And that is a loss. But that's something you have to deal
But
with.
that's-
and I do,
I'm sorry.
No, and
I'm next.
I think.
John's next.
Okay, go, John.
No, I'm next. Go
Oh,
ahead.
But I think it's important because I think about when it happened for me. For me personally, it didn't change. I can't remember how old I was. I was probably like 10, 11,
Yeah.
something like that.
It's up there a little bit.
And it didn't, like, I still had joy. But I don't, about the Christmas season. But I don't know if that was because I had a younger brother and I was trying to, like, still keep up the, like,
Here's
belief
the second
for him.
part of my talk with Aaron.
And so,
Exactly.
like, therefore, it kind of, like, I still was able to have like Christmas spirit
Listen,
and joy.
my kids at age 22 and 19 still have this magical joy and excitement about Christmas. They do. I do, for that matter, as Santa Claus. Look, the privilege of being in the group of being a bigger kid needs to be, highlighted when you have this talk and this interaction and it's really an interaction, not a talk, because the kid's interacting with you, I hope, is to be careful that other kids don't know this. So really be respectful about the magical experience that they're having, and instead of the tricks now, but they don't. So you really need to be kind about that. And for Aaron, most importantly, we still want to have this magic show for your younger brother, and he joined into that. We didn't do Elf on the Shelf, but if you do the elf thing,
Ugh.
Well, that's where
That's where
all the stuff, the bad stuff, began with my clients.
With the elf,
the
where
Elf
they
on the
didn't
Shelf.
coordinate.
We're definitely not
coordinate
doing
with-
Elf on the Shelf at our
You
house.
don't, because and the person said, and the child said, the elf lost its magic. That's true. Here's a point: is developmentally, the magical thinking occurs in Freud and with Piaget is at the age of 5, 6, 7 years old, and then as they begin to develop and question
Cognition,
on their own,
frontal
cognition,
cortex.
and so they start to go more into a concrete thinking mode.
Yep.
Children do, and that's not
Developmental.
developmental. And so everybody has different times for that. And so I think it's important to be kind because children are at different stages, even if they're chronologically the same age.
Absolutely.
Developmentally.
And, John, it's a good point that you make with the developmental Piaget modeling. Well, it's not a model. It's basically scientific biological fact in the way that psychology develops. To answer your question, Victoria, or concern rather, you're not doing harm or damage to the 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kid, to believe something that isn't true. They're really not on the level of you're lying to me. I think when they begin to get 6, 7, 8, and they're asking formative questions, and cognition is beginning to develop, concrete thinking is beginning to develop, problem solving is beginning beginning to develop, and then you carry it on for your own pleasure and well-being, the kid will begin to sense that. Like, wait a minute, this is BS, and you're not answering my questions. The answers to my questions is not adding up. Now you're running into a problem.
Right.
You're getting into...
So, in other words, you're kind of approaching it from the parents' point of, the sense that the parents become the encumbrance and can actually sow the seeds for some resentment for the kids
I think
if
so.
they carry it on too long.
Yeah, I think so. And, there can be great pain in that. I mean, that's where people really experience trauma and turmoil.
Did you experience trauma?
I really don't.
I was joking.
No, I really don't. Honestly, I don't remember when I found out, which tells me it wasn't as big a deal for me.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I know when I stopped, and I was able, and I think it was because of my parents, was to transition it. And I think you could have taken the words out of my parents. You took the words out of my parents
in my description.
In your description, that's how they dealt with us about it. We became a little skeptical, and we would start looking for the presents.
Oh yeah.
So we kind of knew,
And see, that makes me think, because I was in 5th grade when I cornered my mom in the car. Like, it makes me think, if I hadn't had brought it up, like, how much longer would she, would they have kept? And this might be a question I ask my mom now when I see her,
right.
but like, how much longer would they? Because I don't necessarily remember asking questions about it. Like, because for us, okay, so I know everyone does it different. For us, like, Santa presents were never wrapped. They were like out in the open.
Yeah.
And then presents from my mom and dad and like from other people, they were always wrapped. And I'm 30 years old and we still get presents from Santa. Like, we still have our, like, gifts that come, like, with our stocking that come
Well, I do
unwrapped.
that with my middle-aged children.
And so, I think, I don't know.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to continue this because it's a good conversation, and we're going to go half of the show on, traditions and rich history of Christmas, and then we'll do the second half on assertiveness, and we'll do the same thing next week. We'll do a little bit more religious theme of your family traditions and this and
then
that,
the rest of
and then the
assertiveness.
rest of the assertiveness.
Okay.
stuff.
So you don't
That's what
want
I
to
think
get coal in your stocking.
No,
Also, that's
my
just
brother
mean.
should have got
Yeah.
coal. But I mean, because these are, I think, important things. They're important enough, and our conversation obviously hasn't ended. And wonder how many people have turned the show back on and like, oh god, they're still talking about this. It's way past 10 minutes.
Sorry.
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. You can look it up.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of fear in Victoria. I think your experience of like, I'm not sure that I want to do this, and I have had people with that experience as well, where it's like, I want them to know who to say thank you to. I want them to not cheapen the giving, or various concerns about religion. Sometimes this is anti-religion.
I think,
Yeah.
and I don't know, because maybe I also come from the perspective of I've worked in a school, and one thing that happens at school is after Christmas break, when everybody comes back.
Yeah, my goodness.
The famous question that every teacher asks, what did Santa bring you? What did you get for Christmas? What did Santa bring you?
What grade is that?
I was in an elementary school.
Oh, okay.
And so it's sometimes hard for me to think when you have one kid, you have Bobby, who gets an iPad from Santa, right?
Right.
But then you have Sally over here who just gets like a toothbrush and shampoo and socks from Santa. So sometimes I have a hard time, like, and I guess that might be when like kids start asking questions like, oh, like, why did Santa bring Bobby an iPad when I asked for an iPad, but like Santa only brought me a toothbrush, toothpaste, and some shampoo and socks. Like, it's so sometimes, and I don't know, maybe if I'm thinking too into it, but sometimes, like, how do you justify that to a kid?
Yeah. I don't think you're thinking too much into it. I think when you get to that level of cognition, you're way past the mark. Yeah. Like, you're way past the need to have had that probably 2 years prior.
I would agree.
That's a parent carrying this on for the parent's pleasure. Problem. Let me say that again. I feel like that's a parent's carrying this on for their pleasure as the problem.
And so it's conspicuous consumption, being able to, in a way, they project some of their own feelings of, I want to say it, inadequacy by getting big gifts for the kids
From Santa.
From Santa, and so they get some sort of a pleasure from it. But the problem is, it's not teaching the kiddos values and what is the true meaning of the holiday.
Yeah, because Victoria, if you think about it, I mean, when you're in the second grade, kids don't give a shit about a rip about.
What's your language?
I know. I'm so sorry.
No,
it is an adult program, but look, kids don't care in the second grade where they got a toothbrush or a fish or a frog or a TV. They're not. The cognition isn't kicked in yet.
Okay, that makes sense.
When I was in the second grade, man, the best thing ever was Lando Calrissian's ship from Star Wars.
A box, an empty box for me.
Absolutely, right. Yeah. I could have done better with that. Although Lando Calrissian.
Well, that was good because
But it really was. I mean, the record player that was a $10 record player was like magical for a little kiddo. So
we got a $10 phonograph, and it was wonderful, and it had a little sound box in it. It didn't.
Mine was better than yours. Santa was nicer to me, John.
Mine.
So
it wasn't
you're saying
even
that
electronic.
my thinking in that way is like too advanced. Like you're saying that there's no first, second, third grader kid that's thinking like, oh, why did they get something better than what I got?
Not as much. I really don't think so.
I didn't see that.
That's my adult cognition.
That's the adult cognition.
Middle high, junior highs, when I started being jealous.
Well, I think you can get jealousy in the fifth grade and fourth, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like what? They're pushing 10 years old.
10 years old.
You're prepubescent, so.
Yeah.
I just think, Victoria, the biggest problem is not whether.
Well, you got to remember, we developed slower back in the dark ages.
Stop it, John. Victoria, I think it's really that people struggle with holding this out too long, rather than the adult concerns of doing damage to little kiddos.
Yeah,
Aaron and I had a wonderful experience having this conversation. It really was. As a matter of fact, he was a little bit sad with the Easter Bunny as he was like pulling it all together. But the funny part of that, and maybe we'll end up with this funny part, he did not like the Tooth Fairy.
Oh, him personally, he just wasn't a fan.
He was freaked out by the Tooth Fairy, man.
Yeah, pain.
This little thing flying around him in the air.
Wings,
we had to put the dollar out with the tooth outside his door.
Inflation.
He was not to be in his pillow.
Yeah.
He was like panicked about that.
Well, and I think
he was pleasureful, happy about that.
And I think another thing to keep in mind is to communicate kind of you've already mentioned it, but if you choose not to teach your kid about Santa, or when you choose to reveal that, whatever, that you communicate that like there are other people that still believe.
Yeah.
And so let's
respect them.
Yeah, let's not go to school.
Yeah, don't be the
I really don't want to be the parent that gets a call that says, "Yeah, your kid just shouted that Santa's not real in front of the whole class."
Really going to happen in the second grade? What 6-year-old, 7-year-old is going to run around in second grade? Well, I have this special knowledge, and I'm going to break it up for you and feel good about myself.
Yeah, but kids are like brutally honest.
Young Sheldon,
and they have no filter.
Sheldon.
Yeah. They have no filter. I mean, I come from working in a school. Like, kids will blurt out just about anything. That's how you find out that people are having affairs and stuff, because kids blurt out what they see.
But honestly, when that's happening, I would imagine, the kindergartner and stuff, they're not going to believe Johnny over there spouting off some nonsense. My mommy said that Santa Claus comes down the chimney. And we love that, and I'm excited, and I'm right, and he's wrong. Listen, I fought blood and tears that the Harlem Globetrotters were a real basketball team in like the fourth grade.
Oh, I remember. We must have had the same rumor going around.
Oh, probably.
That was the same thing. But the other is that there's some good movies that handle this delicately and I think wonderfully. The Miracle on 37th Street.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, because it leaves it leaves it open. It really is.
Boy, I did not expect all of this from a simple current event, but this is we need to taxi in here. But this is
I know about it, but I've never actually seen it.
It's a very good conversation, guys. I'm surprised that we went a lot with this, but let's get to assertiveness.
I was gonna say, you bring up Christmas, I could talk your head off.
She is a Christmas girl.
You're going to assert yourself to make
I'm
sure
gonna be
we do
assertive.
Yes,
Talk
let's be
about
assertive.
Christmas.
But I appreciate that. Thank you for listening. The kids can listen now, I guess. And
It only took us 20 minutes.
yeah, but boy, there's a lot there though. I mean, there's
There
a
is.
lot of feelings come out this time of year, right?
And then we don't have to talk about it today because I will go off about it. But like, then you bring in, we can talk about it next week. But like, bring in like extra things like Elf on a Shelf and what kind of impact that is having on kids.
What is the problem with Elf on the freaking Shelf?
Next week.
We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it.
Problem.
That's
You'll have to tune in next week to hear Victoria complain about Elf on the Shelf.
It is a cute, fun. I am so jealous. I never got that as a child.
I'm glad I didn't do it. As a parent now, who would have to be the one to set up the Elf on the Shelf.
Well, yeah.
I'm thankful that my parents that was not around when I was
Good.
put
Anyways,
cameras.
yeah,
in
anyways,
the eyes of
we're
the
gonna
elf.
move on to assertiveness.
Understanding assertiveness. So, a quick definition came up as confident and forceful behavior. Without reading the show notes, what do you guys think of that definition of assertiveness? Confident and forceful behavior.
A salesman could be confident and forceful and sell you the wrong thing. So I don't like that. That's, to me, could be very aggressive.
That's very non-descriptive.
Yeah.
I think it's a horrible definition. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was like,
Did you get this from
it's
Chat
not
GPT?
assertiveness.
Not that there's
No.
anything wrong with salesmen and saleswomen.
Yeah,
They
John's
work
gonna-
hard.
Way to cover
But-
your ass.
Hey, John's going to get the hate mail now. I get the first half of the hate mail. No, I just thought I couldn't believe that. I love the word assertiveness. And we work with this a lot in therapy. I don't know if y'all do, but I do like a lot. And I'm like, I do not want people to think that they need to be forceful when being assertive. Like that's not assertive. That's aggressive.
Yeah,
Right?
I know
Right.
you talk about assertiveness a lot.
I do.
Well, because I've seen multiple times I've heard you open up your office door as you're wrapping up like sentences, and I feel like 5 times out of 10 the word assertive comes out of your mouth.
Really?
You're like, well, let's work on that assertiveness or something.
Is it that bad? So the Cambridge definition I came up with, much better. The quality of being confident and not frightened to say what you want or believe. Okay. I feel like that is way more of an appropriate.
Well, I like the not frightened because
Right.
it's also saying a kind of an internal change that might be occurring in the person, be able to say what he or she wants to say or needs to say.
Yeah.
So there's a volitional aspect, and the person is not afraid.
Right.
So I like that.
Yeah, I feel like, if you think about being aggressive, we know that anger is rooted in fear, right? Can we also say that being passive is also very much rooted in fear?
For sure.
So when you're trying to engage somebody, you can't engage somebody very effectively when you're operating out of fear. So we want to be fearless as much as possible, which we say is assertiveness.
Yeah. Where or around what topics do you feel like assertiveness comes up? Because like for me,
All over the place
For
to answer
me,
your question.
the one thing I think of is like things that go on in the bedroom. Like
marriage,
that's
for
what,
sure.
yeah. That like, well, I was thinking more sex specifically, but like that's where my
This
mind
is
goes.
what I want.
Yeah. Like being assertive and yeah.
This is what I want, what I really, really want. You're going to be my lover.
That's classic. No, I think it's
You just get it pretty much like general all over the board.
absolutely, Victoria. I think that you have to be an assertive parent. I think you have to be an assertive employee. I think you have to be an assertive student. I think you have to be an assertive professor. I think you have to be an assertive wife and an assertive husband, and we can go on.
Yeah. Well, there was something when I because
let me correct. You strive to be all of those.
Right. When I was in, and I'm going back to middle school again or in junior high. It's when I started talking to girls. I mean, I have some social anxiety. I'm always a little anxious.
I was stupid passive with that.
Yeah. And part of it was learning over a period of 4 or 5 years that I could assert myself and be a gentleman and ask.
Being kind,
empathetic.
Absolutely.
But actually be the real deal.
You know what's funny? You're pulling a lot of these characteristics that we'll talk about next week. No, it's perfect because those are the words that we describe what assertive people do. So that's a little foreshadowing for part of the end. It's not being forceful. Where did that come from as a part of assertiveness is so confusing to me.
Yeah.
And so displeasing because
that's overbearing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not being assertive. I was shocked at that. I really was. And if that's what people
and where did you find that definition?
Victoria, I'm not sure.
You don't remember?
Honestly, just a Google thing. And I didn't go far.
I mean, that was really the most sucky definition.
Well, it was the first one I saw.
That's what bothers me is that comes up in a Google search.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And you come up with absolutely the worst definition.
Okay, but do you believe with the confident part, not the forceful part, but the confident part?
Mostly the force.
Yeah, it's mostly the forceful part that is kind of rubbing you the wrong way.
Absolutely rubbing me the wrong way. Because confident is good.
Yeah,
Comfort is good.
But
you can't be comfortable, kind, compassionate, which is all marks of assertiveness if you're in fear.
Yeah.
But it's also a process. You're becoming confident. You're becoming assertive. Isn't it? I mean, it's a process.
Do you think being assertive builds confidence?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. I think as you become confident, you can be assertive. And then if you're assertive, I think there's a symbiotic
kind of vice versa. It goes like
thing.
They feed off each other.
When I told a young man about marching, and I was the other day and at boot camp, and everybody is given a chance at doing leadership, and some people were kind of really nervous about it, such as myself, and I nearly marched them into the bay, the fellow students or fellow inductees, and but part of that was you learn that assertiveness because everybody, and so you grow into it.
Yeah.
And in other words, I didn't march them into the bay. I got them where they needed to be.
Yeah.
After the gunnery sergeant yelled at me.
Oh boy. Oh, you're killing me, John. Being hung, I guess I'll be genuine to you. I'm super proud papa over here. I'm sitting there listening to you, and I'm thinking about my son.
Anchors away.
I'm thinking about my son. He went into boot camp Navy like 4 days ago. So, oh God.
Yeah, he showed me the video yesterday.
Yeah,
we ran into each other at the gym.
Yeah. So
because he lost his workout partner.
Okay. No,
sorry.
I'm not going to be upset on the Through a
I'm
Therapist's podcast. It goes across the nation and the world. If this is the audio version, I'm not crying. I'm not. It's raw, but I'm up.
You learn to be assertive, so it's not just something that you start with.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, John. Be honest with you, that's an interesting thought because.
False
bravado.
Do you
start with being aggressive? Do you start with being passive? Or do you start with being in the healthiest space in the center, assertiveness? And I might actually argue babies are assertive.
But somewhere
yeah,
okay.
Victoria knows that one.
But when they become toddlers,
when they can start
that's
voicing.
yours is mine.
They become aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's part of a developmental.
Neglected babies, though, don't do that.
They become passive.
DSS workers were very, very concerned when they walk into a home and the baby doesn't even look at them or respond or care.
Okay, this is a good thing, and there's a failure to thrive. There
Right.
are in orphanages in Eastern Europe as an aftermath
That's horrible.
of communism, is that they were wrapped in swaddling clothes, basically tightly wrapped, and laid in a bassinet, and they were never held. They were except when they were changed, and even there wasn't that emotion. And I think they become very passive, or they go to the other extreme.
And
Where-
get aggressive.
Right, or they develop a severe personality disorder where they can't communicate with people.
Yeah, it's so honestly, John, I haven't really thought about it. You went into a different direction. I think
Sorry.
No. I think you're wrong in that.
But I like being wrong.
I think you're wrong in that. I'm just thinking about it in this moment. Babies are assertive. I think is it not fair to say that? Yeah.
Well, I didn't argue with that. I was
Well, you
just
said that we learn to be assertive, and I'm actually thinking that's a natural state. I feel like that's actually the natural.
so that's kind of the
state.
garden, and the idea
Right.
that then when we leave the Garden of Eden, basically, when we become more aware, we start becoming aggressive.
I wondered, right?
Or
I mean,
passive.
I would have.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all.
But I wouldn't have thought that before. This is a new thought for me. I would have agreed with you. I think you
Uh-huh.
have to learn assertiveness training. You have to learn how to be assertive. But you know what? Maybe it's really relearning
Yeah.
what was natural to you that you got away from.
Okay,
That's a big difference.
I would agree with you even on a theological level.
Right?
I'd agree with
Okay,
you.
what do you mean?
Well, I mean, the fact is that God created the universe and He called it good, and that somehow we unlearn that and we experience the alienation.
Yeah,
And
wow.
yeah. So
I never thought of assertiveness as being the natural, steady state.
Yeah.
That's homeostasis. That's what we do as a natural course of interaction. I
But
never
that would
thought
also.
that.
I'm sorry.
No.
But that's where we want to go, isn't it? We all want to have
Oh,
that that sort of that sense of calm and serenity and acceptance,
Peace
peace.
and calm.
Yeah.
And don't you feel good when you can express what your needs are? Don't you feel good when you really have a positive interaction and you feel heard? Well, that's being assertive.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, wow. I mean, honestly, that's a new state, a new thought. Assertiveness as being the natural state that we need to work to return to.
I want to start my own commune now. It's-
Oh, bless.
All right. We did do that.
Yeah.
Victoria, we shut you down. What were you?
No, I mean, I was just going to talk about how, because I didn't teach my kid how to be assertive, but he's assertive when I put, we'll say, spaghetti down in front of him, and he picks up that plate and he hands it right back to me, and he's like shaking his head no.
Oh, yeah.
And he's saying, or he's, he's pushing it back in my hands. He's not being aggressive,
No.
but he's being assertive by saying, like,
No, I don't want spaghetti.
I don't want this.
But
like,
that's-
give me something else. And I didn't teach him that. I mean, he learned, he did that all on his own.
individuation. That's
Yep.
what he's doing. He's becoming a person.
Well,
that makes me feel all giddy.
he is. Well, but even before that, though, John, I think we may have fallen in the same trap. He's becoming a person and telling you no. I think individuation, yes.
It's a process.
Is there not an instinct of assertiveness?
Okay.
Right? I mean, I'm thinking through this with you because developing into the ability of saying no or letting
You're
Victoria know.
saying that we're hardwired
I think so.
that way, and
Are
and
we?
you see, are we that instinctual
To be assertive?
to be assertive?
Question mark.
Okay.
Maybe.
I mean, I think
Or do you think that it has
babies cry coming out of the womb.
Uh-huh.
They tell you when they're wet. They're
when they're
asserting
hungry, yeah.
what their needs are.
Well,
But is that not
No?
just
see,
survival?
that's also that they think their mommy is them. I don't know if I
Yes.
don't know how a baby thinks, but
Well, yeah, they say up until a certain point, up until about, I can't remember, like 6 weeks, something like that, 6 months, something like that.
yeah.
The baby still thinks that they're like inside your like still a part of the mom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they like being on the.
Yeah, that's why they like.
Okay,
Yeah. That's why they like contact naps because of the warmth of your skin.
Well, that's probably a major adjustment. I can't imagine switching that up.
Going from this nice warm belly to like this crazy.
What the heck is this world?
Yeah.
So probably, I think you're right that we start out being naturally assertive, and we unlearn it through the insults of being
of life.
Of
The
life.
world, yeah.
But then we have to relearn it.
Relearn.
But I'm
sure.
not thinking that is. I'm just looking at it differently than you, but I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm being assertive.
I love that, John.
Okay. But
no, it's fascinating. I guess we'll move on, but
I think we just opened up a aspect for you, Chris, that you previously did not think about.
absolutely no. That's
well,
the
I
first time I've ever
think
thought about that.
You know, I was telling.
I mean, I've never thought about having assertiveness training be a relearning. Have you? I mean, that's.
I was
bizarre.
telling your better half about how brilliant you are.
Oh dear God!
Yeah.
How did she respond to that? Don't tell me.
No,
that.
she did not scowl.
She didn't
She
scowl.
smiled. It was a knowing smile. But
Right. That was sarcasm, John. You're too kind. All right, let's move on, though. Key characteristics of being assertiveness is basically, as we've talked about, like really setting boundaries and respecting others, you know, with that kindness and the compassion, John, that you talked about. And we'll talk more about that next week. But here's a really interesting discussion that I want to have with you guys. I hope you didn't read that sentence that I have in show prep about healthy boundary setting.
Oh.
Okay, how do you set boundaries, guys? What are healthy boundary settings? I've had two things that I've always put on that I think is a really good description of what healthy boundary setting means. And that is you arrive by these limits and these boundaries by coming to agreements between people or having long-term norms. The other ways that you come at boundaries generally are passive or aggressive and generally not helpful. I think that's what I've had for years. But literally this past week, this came up, and I think I just added a piece that is needed potentially in setting boundaries in a healthy way. Okay, so how do you guys submit to clients or people, like setting healthy boundaries? I'll tell you that third thing in a moment if you didn't already read it. But, you know, agreements or long-term norms. Is there something else that I've missed?
well, I'm
What is healthy
going to
boundary
add
setting?
to that just a little bit because that's like what MSWs are masters of is group work,
Right.
and that you have healthy boundaries, you have rules
In a group. Yep.
in a group. Well, wouldn't that also go with families and
Absolutely.
couples and
Absolutely.
extended
Any
families?
relationships.
Yeah.
Particularly in groups.
Yeah.
Well, I will repeat what I have said on this podcast before.
Okay.
Is that, and what I tell my clients repeatedly, is that boundaries without a consequence are just a heavy suggestion.
You know what? You did say that.
I've said that multiple times before. And I did not come up with that. What?
That's brilliant.
Thank you. I did not come up with that. I will not take credit for it, even though part of me is tempted to. But I will not take credit for it. But I cannot give credit to where it's credit due because I can't remember her name. But actually, it was a sermon that I heard.
Yeah.
We're
From
standing-
Elevation. But
We're standing on shoulders of giants.
yeah. But yeah,
We
health.
do.
Not necessarily. Well, any healthy boundary, but boundaries without consequences are just a heavy suggestion.
Well, and but still, you know, interestingly enough, I've heard you say that, and that fits. I think before when I agreed it, I think I missed a spirit of that and got the bigger part of that.
Okay.
And the bigger
Which
part
is?
of that is if we make an agreement and you don't carry through on that agreement, then there needs to be a consequence.
Right.
If we make an agreement because it's a long-term norm and you change that dramatically, then there needs to be a consequence. So I've always gotten that.
Right.
But there's a spirit underneath that that I didn't get, I missed if it was intended.
Okay.
And this is what I've added this week.
Okay.
Okay. Is it possible to really set boundaries with other people in a very healthy way through simple requirements? That's the
Meaning
piece
what?
I never did. Requirements. You have long-term norms or you have agreements. That's the way we set boundaries.
Right.
We can also set agreements in a healthy way with just setting requirements.
So it's accountability?
Yeah. Well,
So give me an example of a requirement.
That's what. Yeah, I need you to elaborate a little bit on that.
okay, I'll tell you why this came up. Because we were really working on boundaries this week. It was separating and divorcing, where they have a new life partner, actually domestic partner now. They're living with somebody else, and they're working with their ex or soon-to-be ex. And it's kind of like boundary setting there. And it occurred to me, wait a minute, you're being passive. He's like, yeah, I know I'm being passive. I want to work on this. And so I'm like, great. But it occurred to me, he's setting boundaries with his ex. Mm-hmm. And his ex is sometimes going to be not agreeable to what he wants in interacting with him. And they don't really have long-term norms because this is all new anyway.
Right.
So really, he's needing to place a requirement in the scenario so that they know how we're going to interact. Otherwise, he's just not going to interact. For instance, to be ridiculous, Victoria, you're my ex, and respectfully, I'm going to require that you not punch me in the face when we have conversations, period. If you do that, I will leave. That's a requirement.
Okay.
And that's a ridiculous, silly
Sounds
example.
doable.
But I'm going to place that as a requirement. Now,
Okay.
But parenting
parenting
would be a good example.
Sure.
Of,
right? But to make it more real, if you're my ex, Victoria, and I say, look, I don't like it when you raise your voice. It's
Right.
uncomfortable to me. And when you begin getting aggressive that way. So I will not have a conversation when you do that.
Okay.
That's a requirement that I'm placing on this interaction from now moving forward.
Okay.
It's not an agreement. It's not a long-term norm. So the question I have to you, is this a really healthy and strong way to set boundaries? What say y'all?
Oh. I'm go ahead.
No, I don't know.
After you. Après moi. After.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. All right. I want to say that's covenant. You're making a covenant. It's a higher than a contract. So requirements would be like a contract. I mean, or saying I've got boundaries and it's a contract. I'm not going to go over your property and all that. But a covenant would be actually having that involvement that person is actively participating. I'm not going to punch you in the face. I agree. I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to abide by that. And so there's a requirement.
Okay, but the covenant is a strong word, and that is a commitment that we make to each other in agreement. So that was in my old thinking. We make agreements, and those are the boundaries that we create. Or we have long-term norms. The example I always use is we have Sunday meals together at, brunches or lunch dinner at 2:00
Yeah.
every Sunday. We sit down. So, here in 3 days.
Well, I think
expect.
a covenant's overweening. It's organic.
But then say your requirement is that you would appreciate, that I not punch you in the face.
Right.
Whenever we have a conversation or argument. But then if you agree if I agree to that, then wouldn't that just be an agreement?
Right. Exactly.
I'm
But when
getting lost.
speaking-
I think I'm getting lost.
When
here.
he's speaking to his ex, she may not be agreeable,
Okay.
and he can still set a requirement. And
I know.
I've never thought about it that way.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't exactly feel like
I
I'm
think
tracking you.
You're
tracking what
fleshing
talking
this
about.
theory out, and it's going to take a while for it to germinate, and it will grow, and you'll be able to convince her.
Indeed. Well,
Yeah. I know. I'm serious. I'm saying it.
Neil's
As
going
I
for
say,
the mic.
Neil has something to say.
Okay, Neil.
Talk about pressure. Like everyone stops and stares at me. It's really weird. It's kind of when you start negotiating, you have to be assertive in what you want in the agreement. And so the requirement is your side. This is what I'm saying I want in this part.
Whether or not the other person agrees to it.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're being assertive with what you want. And if you don't set your requirements out there, you guys can't come to an agreement. So there's an assertiveness to setting a requirement to start those boundaries.
So like a requirement could be, I would like to sit down and have dinner as a family every night. Now, whether or not the family is agreeable to that is up for question, but that could be like a requirement for that. I say I would, I'm like,
it's
like
tricky,
that kind
right?
of thing.
Neil, I think you were tracking me with that. It sounds like, and it's tricky though, because, and I guess I'm curious what you would say, Neil, to that, because Victoria, like, no, you got to be really careful with this one, and you're right, John. This is why I'll flesh it out, and I appreciate it. I think it's a cool conversation about assertiveness and boundaries, right? Because, long-term norms is easy to say. Yeah, that's how we set boundaries. Agreements and making agreements in any fashion, whether a covenant, whether it's a conversation, whether it's group rules, we have agreements, and those are boundaries. But Neil, you kind of picked out the idea that there are times when the other person doesn't agree. It might not be what they want, but we do have, and so we set a requirement, but we do have to be careful that they're not unrealistic requirements. You can't require your family to sit down to the meal all the time every day. Like, they may not agree.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, so do you follow that, Neil? Like, how do you hear that?
Like I said, it's like a contract negotiation. When you
Okay, so if maybe
I
I say dinner, I want to sit down and have dinner with my family 3 out of the 7 nights.
Sure.
A week.
Well, even still, your requirement is you want to have dinner every night. Now, it's up to you to handle when things don't go your way because life happens. But you still have a requirement of what you want. It's about being assertive. It's about stating what you want. Okay. That's the important part in this whole process is when you're in a relationship, it's not you becoming passive aggressive because the husband's not doing what you want. Well, you never told him that you want to have dinner every night.
Okay.
It's clear requirements of what you expect out of these boundaries. Whether they agree with it or not, you have to come to the table with, here's what I'm offering, here's what I want. That, but you have, and that goes back to the assertiveness. Assertiveness is a confidence in presenting what you want out of the deal.
But it's a process too, and I'm thinking that's, and for me, the idea is that you can have boundaries. And boundaries for your children when they're 6, 5, and 4, and this is the rules we're going to be meeting for dinner all the time. You do it all the time, right?
Those are long-term norms.
Right.
Yeah.
So long-term is the idea is that may be negotiable in terms of like as you get older and you get involved in sports, but the long-term goals is that you all still meet for dinner. Okay.
So this has been really fun. I didn't expect as much discussion about either the current event nor this, but these are 2 good discussions. So here's where I'm landing, guys, as a little bit of a landing spot, because we need to taxi in to some extent here today, actually. Is it appropriate to say the ideal way to set boundaries is that you make and forge agreements together, or you have long-term norms that are really long-term, and on rare occasions, you may need to place requirements into the mix when the other person's not agreeable.
Okay.
But I'm adding that, Neil, because what you're saying is that's part of negotiating, which is reaching agreements. But I'm saying sometimes, particularly like in the situation with an ex-spouse, you may need to place a requirement where they're not agreeable. But that sounds like, from our discussion, I'm gathering, should be kind of rare. Does that sound?
Yeah.
Is that a better?
Yeah.
That's a better landing space, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I mean, that just occurred to me. I haven't. It really is. It's a bit of a new thought this week about the third piece there. That sometimes you're still going to need to set boundaries in a healthy way, and you might not be able to reach agreement with the other person.
What if you're in a committed relationship or marriage, a long-term partnership, and one of the clients develops a serious mental illness, and there is a real need for assertiveness,
Oh yeah.
Because the other person has lost the ability to have boundaries.
Well, okay, you
that's
just set up part 2. You just set
Okay.
up our conversation next week in a lot of ways, because we're going to talk about the benefits to assertiveness and what people struggle with passive and aggressive tendencies, and really the tendencies that we have to become, assertive, what we have to overcome, and how we develop it. So it'll be a little bit of assertiveness training and stuff next time, because when you're there, and that's that's not the only one, John. You know as well as I do. There are situations where life really turns on a dime, and if you're not having grown into the ability to be assertive, or as we learned a little bit ago, relearn the natural state of being assertive, then you're going to be in trouble, because there's a problem in the relationship when it turns like that, and you have to. If you don't have those skills, you're going to get run over. You will get run over.
Will be a milquetoast.
It is an uncomfortable space to be.
That's a word.
Boy, John and Victoria had a look just now.
Oh my goodness!
You got to check out
She
the
didn't know what
YouTube. Hey, we're asking
Get
for
us the-
subscribers on YouTube. We're trying to
Yes.
push to 1,000. So here's an
Tell your
ask.
friends, tell your family,
You would have seen
tell the stranger you
You
walk
would-
by on
the
the
look.
street.
You would have seen the look that
Yeah.
was on there.
I'm irritating her today. So
I tell you.
I wonder about some of the things that come out of your mouth
Yeah.
sometimes.
All right, listen. Anything to add? Winding up in our conversation today. I think I'm surprised about it. We're going to change the title of the show, but
Be assertive.
yeah. Okay, John. Closing thoughts, comments.
there is a Santa Claus.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, I believe there is a Santa Claus.
I believe
but
there is a Santa Claus. As
it may
well.
not, as we traditionally know, but we do. There is.
So listen, we're going to talk about holiday, maybe Elf on the Shelf. I don't know next time as well, but we'll get into holiday stuff and more on assertiveness next week, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. Take care. Work to be well.